stream. And today I have a very special guest, Dennis, the planner, the transit planner guy.
Hello. Hi there.
So if you've never watched one of our live streams before, here's what you do. You watch us, of course, but you can also give us comments by just putting comments. If you're watching on Facebook Live, put comments in the comments field. And if you're doing it on Periscope, just simply type them in as well. If you're not watching this live, of course, this is going to be on playback. You can still send us comments. We love to answer your questions. We'll try to answer all of your questions here, but if we miss them, we will answer them after the fact. Now, the subject for today is the Evergreen Extension, and in particular, bus service changes for it. That's why we got Mr. Planner Guy here. So one thing to note is we have a new extension to the SkyTrain line. It's called the Evergreen Extension. Do you have one of those brochures?
I do. Here it is.
There it is. And that's opening on December 2nd at noon. So get ready for it, everybody. But because we have a new extension, we have to change things to our bus service because we don't want to have any redundant service, and we're trying to do best with what we have and service as many people and as well as we can. So we're here with the planner guy, and we're going to get going on that. And before that, I just want to show off our nerdiness for transit. What do you got?
I love transit.
You do?
It's 100% true.
And this is the latest 2016 version of the I Love Transit Camp, which happens every end of the summer. So watch for it in the summertime because it's super fun. Anyways,
Absolutely.
That's the plug. We do love transit, by the way. So let's start off with my layman's question, which is, what is transit planning anyways? I know what like a city planner does. They plan like communities and streets and services. What does a transit planner do?
We get to draw lines on maps. No, it's not that simple at all.
Wow.
It's a really exciting challenge. How do we use the resources that we have, the public resources, and try and serve as many people as we can? And how do we work with the public to really put together a system that meets the needs of everyone in Metro Vancouver? It's a fun challenge. There are lots of difficult questions, difficult trade-offs, and I love it. I love getting into it. I love talking to people about what do they value in their transit network, and turning that into reality.
That's great.
Yeah.
So it's easy. No, I'm joking. Sounds really difficult, and you have to go to school for it, right?
I mean, yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay. Great. So if you're just tuning in now, give us your questions about changes that are coming up. And if you don't know what the changes are that are coming up, we're going to be talking about them. But you can also check out transit.ca and the Buzzer blog. And we're going to be posting a blog almost every day until the launch of all these changes, which is the 19th, where most of them are going to happen. And also, if you wanted just to check how it's going to affect you, is go on Trip Planner. You can, I think they're already loaded in.
Absolutely.
For post 19th and beyond. You can just go to Trip Planner and find out what your change is.
Just make sure you put in December 19th as the day you're traveling.
That's very
or
good.
later.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start off with some of the bigger changes. So we're going to focus on the 135. I've never taken it, so you're going to have to walk through it there. Sure. I'd love to. It sounds like a wonderful route.
Yeah.
But we're going to start off with the 135, and you've printed this off for us. Can you show us what, if I went on the 135 today, tell me where it goes.
Absolutely. Well, for most people that ride the 135 today, after December 19th, you'll be riding the 95 B line. And so we're basically turning the 135 into a B line. What does that mean? Why, what makes it so special that it's a B line? Well, it'll make fewer stops. So you can see on this map, and this is identical to what we have on our website, these are the stops that it'll make. Instead of providing local service on Hastings, it'll be a lot like the 99 B line. And so your trip from SFU to downtown, one of the things that we've heard from our customers is that there are big reliability problems on the 135. And so we're hoping that by taking out some of the stops, it'll really make it a lot more reliable. It'll give the bus more time to do the same trip. Now, you might be saying, well, I use one of these stops in between. How am I going to access transit now if I live in Burnaby Heights?
That's what I was thinking.
Well, all right, I have an answer for you. There are also some big changes happening to the 160, which also runs along your street, which you probably weren't able to use to get between Burnaby and Vancouver. Okay. The 160 is going to start providing local service all along its corridor that it runs. So it's getting truncated at Kootenay Loop, and people that use the 160 now won't be able to use it all the way to get downtown. But one of the reasons that that's happening is because we expect a big shift in traffic, obviously, to the Evergreen line. If you're traveling from Coquitlam Central Station to downtown Vancouver, we're looking at really big time savings to take the SkyTrain instead of the bus. And so what we can do is shift some of those buses, some of those service hours, to other parts of the Tri-Cities to really try and improve service for the whole subregion and really meet some of the connections that we expect people are going to try and make.
Right.
Yeah.
So in short, we're changing the service because we have this Evergreen Extension coming in, so we would have parallel service going on. And then we're also adding in a new service, the 95 B line, which is a rapid transit.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely going to be more rapid, make fewer stops, and yeah, it really should improve service on the Hastings corridor.
Now, I know one question that comes up often is, you know, my bus is late or doesn't show up sometimes. So what's the difference with a regular, as I used to call them, milk run routes, as opposed to these more B-line routes? Is it easier to stay on schedule?
Well, yeah, it is easier to stay on schedule. It's certainly more predictable. Every time you introduce a stop, you introduce a certain level of unpredictability. If you have 20 people get on, you know, that could be enough to throw a bus off schedule, depending on what the schedule looks like. And so we're really being careful with the new 95B line to you know, try and have some padding in there to account for that variability, and having fewer stops cuts down on that variability.
Of course, you know, the bus is going to go as fast as the road allows, so if there's accidents, we can't really factor in for that, but you're saying it's a little easier to stay on time if we've got fewer stops to hit.
Yeah.
Now, I've got my wonderful colleague here, Sarah, behind the camera. Sarah, can you wave for everybody? Very nice. She's going to be grabbing your questions, but I know we have already had some questions when we announced we were going to be doing this. So let me go through and see what we have here. We have one that came on, I think it was the Buzzer blog earlier. What happens to the 791 and the 701 via Maple Ridge? And also, what will the weekend hours be for Evergreen Extension?
Great question. The weekend hours are going to be roughly the same as the rest of the SkyTrain, and you can look that up on our website, the schedules. Also, these are everywhere in the system, so the first and last trains are printed in this. The first question about connections between Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, and the rest of the region, the 791 is not changing at all. You'll still be able to take the train to Braid, no changes to the schedule. The 701 will happen to have a new connection to a shiny new train. It's going to Coquitlam Central Station. It won't change for people that use it currently in terms of the schedules or the run times. So connections from Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows will stay the same to Coquitlam. Because the West Coast Express train bus is being discontinued, we are lengthening some 701s that currently end at Haney Place. We're extending those all the way to Mission, and only at certain times of the day to match the train bus schedule. It's kind of not much is changing for Maple Ridge Pitt Meadowers, but as a little bonus, you'll have some, you know, limited number of trips that will go to Mission.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, what happens after the 19th? Is it all done? You guys walk away on vacation, or what happens?
No. What happens after the 19th is we really start monitoring the phone calls, the emails, the tweets, the Facebook posts, everything that we get in to really understand what has happened. Like, what have these changes been effective? Have we kind of met the right demands? You can never really perfectly predict how this is going to play out post-service change. So we're really focused on our next task is to take a look at what demand has been like. We have better and better ways of figuring out what demand is. Obviously, we have the emails and the tweets, but we also have Compass data, which has been enormously helpful. And so we can look at that demand and really try and figure out like how things are going, which buses are overcrowded, which ones are underused, and try and kind of shuffle things around. I mean, obviously, there's a whole other world of the investment plan, the 10-year vision that just got approved last week. Right. That's a whole new world for us. We're looking at implementing a whole bunch of new bus service in the next 3 years. And so that'll be the other thing that we're working on, but it'll definitely allow us to maybe plug holes in the network as things develop.
Right, and so of course feedback you can send it to on any of our social channels. You can also fill out the feedback form. I believe it's translink.ca/feedback. And if you want somebody to call you back, you want to click that button. those are the two best ways that I would say to get a hold of us. Now, we have a few minutes. I know this is your precious lunch hour, and we got to get back to getting ready for Evergreen Extension, but we have a few more minutes to take questions. Of course, if we don't get to your question, we will answer it after the fact. I'm just going to go look at what we had here, unless our director behind said camera has something for us.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions regarding the 160.
Okay.
So one is about now customers are going to have to take 2 buses to get to SFU, and then the other portion of it is
I can handle.
Is that the travel time for the 160 is going to increase significantly.
So just to paraphrase, in case people didn't hear that at home, I've got a couple questions about the 160 and how you'll be able to get to SFU. Is it 1-2 connections? How's that going to work?
It's I think a little bit of a separate question. I'll handle the SFU one first.
Sure.
Right now, how people get from Coquitlam to SFU is they take the 143, which goes all the way straight across to SFU. Starting on the 19th, the 143 will go from Burquitlam Station to SFU, and there'll be a separate bus that runs along Como Lake. So we're actually changing the 151 to provide all day, all week service along Como Lake. It used to be that there was no bus that did this straight across except for the 143. So obviously there's a big kind of rejigging of the network that's happening here, and one of the reasons for that is that we expect people going to SFU are going to want to take the Evergreen line for as much of their trip as possible. So if you used to, and the huge amount of people did this, they used to take the bus from Coquitlam Central Station all the way to SFU. You can do most of that on the Evergreen line, and it'll be way faster. And if you have a U-Pass, it's a one-zone fare, or regardless, either way. So it's a big improvement for those passengers. For people that live along Como Lake, yes, you will have to transfer. Keep in mind that there are a couple of different routes that run different sections of Como Lake. So we'll be adding the 151 straight across, but there's also the 153 that does this section. There's another route that does this section. So there'll be a fair amount of frequency on Como Lake. And yeah, it'll kind of link you in here. And the other element that is interesting is that you used to not have access along Como Lake to SFU on weekends. This will significantly improve weekend access because you'll be able to take the bus to Burquitlam, take the train 2 stops, and then take this bus straight up to SFU. So I think that covers the kind of the SFU one.
I think so.
Then the other question was about the 160. Travel time is increasing on the 160, and I think that the main reason for that is that we expect the kind of the 160's raison d'être, like its reason for being, is going to change a lot. It used to be the Northeast sector's direct transit connection to downtown, and we expect that will be the Evergreen line. We're talking about upwards of 15-minute time savings between Coquitlam Central to get to Burrard Station if you take the new Evergreen line. So we really think that things are kind of going to shift around. So as we mentioned, the 160 is getting truncated at Kootenay Loop. If you want to keep going along this corridor, you can just change anywhere in North Burnaby, change onto the 95B line. The 95B line runs every 5 minutes in the peak hours, so your average wait time will only be 2 or 3 minutes. And you can head downtown that way. It will take longer. The other thing that's happening, there's 2 other things that's happening to the 160. It's getting a lot more frequent. So a lot of the hours that got taken off of the Vancouver portion of that route are going into making the 160 run every 15 minutes, almost all day long until the early evening. So every 15 minutes we'll have a 160. The other thing that's happening is that it used to run along Guildford Way only part of the time, and so starting on the 19th, it's going to run along Guildford Way every trip. And that's really to provide access to this kind of densely populated area up here. There's City Hall, there's stores. These are really kind of good transit supportive areas, and we want to make sure that they still have a good frequent service in that corridor. If this kind of detour is slowing you down, there's always the option to take the Evergreen line to kind of jump over it, skip it. If you want to connect at Moody Center, you can do that. If you want to connect all the way downtown on the Millennium Line, you have that option too.
So in short, there's a lot of options.
There's so many options. There's so many different things that's happening. It's a little bit tough to I feel like I'm being really long-winded here, but
I think you could talk about it for a while.
I mean, try me.
Right now.
Okay, please don't. But the bottom line is that I can't even memorize all the changes that are happening. It's really important to go to Trip Planner and just put in your origin, put in your destination, and see how your trip is going to change, because there's probably all sorts of unanticipated ways in which, like, oh, that option opens up to me now because of such and such a change. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I understand that this is one of the biggest changes we've done as far as bus service in our history,
Yeah.
Transic's history. So
Yeah.
Your feedback is really important. So as you mentioned, go on Trip Planner, check it out. December 16th and beyond. You also want to check out social media and let us know what you think about the changes. Sometimes it's good to see what the changes are like before you comment on them. And it might be a little different than you think. You can also give us feedback at transic.ca/feedback. Any other questions? Because I think we may have 1 minute left, but I think we got most of them. However, we love answering your questions. So make sure you keep them coming. You can post on the Buzzer blog. We'll upload this video in the next couple hours. Otherwise, you can find it on Facebook, of course, and on Periscope, and it'll be on the Buzzer blog as well. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Honor, Dennis. And let us know what you think of these, and let us know what subject matters you want us to talk about.